Welcome to the College Football Preview Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry, and we're back for another season of previewing the Division I college football games in New England, and we're excited to be doing so. Happy college football season. It is here, the best season of the year. I think, Ryan, college football is the best team sport in the world. There's nothing like it, the pageantry, the excitement, the games. It's better than college hoops. It's better than all these other college sports. It is awesome, and it is finally here.
I am excited. A few technical difficulties, which are hopefully in our past, as is the off season as we welcome college football. I'm very excited to be back with you. Honored to be asked back as always and be here discussing what is, I think, really one of the best sports in the world. It's like you said, it's different than everyone else, and the passion's different, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff to go over tonight, this season. For I think I'm really excited for this season, and just really happy that it's a full slate of college football. It's on right now on my TV here. It's. I'm just ready. I'm sure you are as well.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I've been watching Boise State, South Florida. Some good games tonight. Nebraska, Cincinnati, among others. I do want to remind you that before we get started here, we are brought to you by Yolked. Visit yolked.com today to purchase one of the best protein products on the market. If you are serious about taking your workouts to another level, then you need Yolked. It is a safe and effective protein product at only 47 calories per packet. It's a low-calorie way to add some protein to your workout and see the difference in your results. Visit yolked.com today. If you're a coach and you're looking for a protein product that is safe and effective for your entire team, they got great specials on the website. You can get great deals there. If you're an individual just looking to add protein to your workout routine, again, you can't go wrong with Yolked. It's a safe and effective product. Yes, it's made out of egg yolk. Nothing added to it that could potentially harm you if you use it on a consistent basis. Again, if you're looking to add protein to your workout regimen, visit yolked.com today. It's a great product. I've used it in the past, and I plan on using it again now as we get into the fall and I get back into my workout routine, lifting routine. I incorporate Yolked. I swear by the product. I think it's terrific, and we're glad that they're back for another season here. So what we're going to do tonight, Ryan, is we're going to preview the upcoming season and week one. So we're going to blend it all in somehow and make it work. And as always, we're going to start with Boston College, the local FBS program here, coming off a 7-win season last year in Bill O'Brien's inaugural season. Expectations are high this season for the Eagles. But the difference between this season and last is the schedule. The Eagles play a much more daunting and challenging schedule this season than they did last season. And in typical Boston College, as we've seen in recent years, the Eagles have gone off to a good start, then they tend to slow down, then they pick it up again at the end of the season. Bill O'Brien and his staff is looking to avoid that. They want a more consistent performance. They're going to have an opportunity to get off to a good start this Saturday when they host FCS Fordham at the Heights to open the season. But just some initial impressions on Boston College. And I want to also get into how you think they'll ultimately fare this season record-wise. But what are some thoughts here on the Eagles heading into this season?
Well, I hope that people better show up on Saturday. Poor Bill O'Brien. The only things I feel like I've seen him for this offseason have been hyping up his team because he's excited and trying to get people to go and stay. So for the love of all things that are good, BC fans, I hope you show up Saturday and support Billy B. I know that he's really excited, as am I. I mean, I was looking at their schedule the other day, and I really only saw 3 kind of marquee losses that felt like, like Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU felt like those, it's hard to see a win, but I do see a lot of wins on their schedule, and I do think this is a team that is talented, and I think especially in year 2 with O'Brien, it should fare well, right? Because he typically gets better over time when you look at how he's done at his programs when he was at Penn State and with the Texans, right? So it takes a little bit, and I do think, adding Dylan Lonergan, being in the mix, and getting Lewis Bond back, I think that there is something there, and I do think in some ways people are kind of sleeping on the Eagles a little bit. It's hard for me to see them, I don't think that they're going to have a 5-7, 4-8 season. I don't think that. I think 6-6 would be disappointed, but I do think there are 7 wins there again to be had. But I think for me, the question is, can they get over that hump and get to 8? And that's where I worry. Like that's where like the toss-up games. Can they beat Michigan State again? Pitt. Can they not? Let the tires fall off against Louisville. Georgia Tech's going to be good again. So those are the games for me that I'm looking at that would stop them from that 8-win season. But I think it could happen. I think they could be the best team in New England this fall.
I think so much of it is going to depend on Dylan Lonergan. He wins the starting quarterback job, beats out Grayson James. More of a better fit in terms of the offense. He's a passer first, but he's also pretty athletic and he can play in and out of the pocket. Going into the spring, I thought Grayson James would be the guy. I thought he would win the job. If not, I thought if it was a true competition, he would win it in fall camp. Lonergan, of course, has ties with O'Brien. He was involved briefly in his recruitment before he left for the Patriots a couple of years ago when Lonergan came out of Georgia. For me, I think it comes down to him. I think the offensive line is going to be pretty good. You bring back Logan Taylor, Dwayne Alec. There's some experience there. There's also some youth there. Jude Bowery at left tackle. I like that group. I think the running game is going to be terrific. Turbo Richard, Jordan McDonald, Alex Broom. They're going to run the football. The tight ends will be better. And look, you mentioned Lewis Bond. The talent on the perimeter is really good. Offensively, this team can be very good. But again, I think it's going to come down to Lonergan. And I think defensively, for me, it comes down to their front seven. Can they generate the kind of pass rush that they did last year when they had Donovan Ezaraku and Neto Okpala? If they can generate a consistent pass rush like we saw from them last year, that secondary is elite. They may have the best secondary in the ACC. That's one of the top secondaries in the country. So they're not going to give up big plays. If anything, they're going to make big plays on the back end. It's going to come down to that front seven, stopping the run and getting a consistent pass rush. And I think if Boston College does that and the offense plays to the level we think they're capable of, I agree with you. Then now you're talking about a potential 8 to 9 win team. But I still think the schedule is the caveat here, Ryan. Week 2, you go to Michigan State. Jonathan Smith's squad's going to be better.
Yeah.
Then you have Cal coming here. Then you have Stanford. Those are both winnable games. But then you mentioned those toss-up games. Pitt, Georgia Tech, Syracuse at the end of the year. Those are games that could go either way, especially depending on how the season goes for those teams. SMU, I would put in that category as well. They have to come up here. So I think it's one of those things where, as always, right, as a coach, you want to get off to a good start. It is imperative to get off to a good start. If they can get off to a good start and sustain it, then I think they're in pretty good shape to potentially win 8 games and with a bowl win, maybe 9. But I think it's going to be a battle, especially in October, mid-October to early November. During that stretch, you got to play Clemson. UConn comes here, and then, of course, Notre Dame comes here the first weekend in November. And that game, the ticket prices are already through the roof. So I definitely think it's one of those things where I like this team on paper, but in a lot of ways, Ryan, they have to prove to me that they can get past this bugaboo where they get off to a good start, then they hit that midseason schneid. If they do that, they'll be fine. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Saturday they are hosting Fordham at the Heights, Chestnut Hill for the season opener. Obviously, we're not going to get into point spreads and everything else. And it's an FCS opponent. I got a good buddy of mine on the staff over there at Fordham. He's the offensive line coach. That unit will be ready to play. Coach Chiosi, he used to coach at Bryant. But for me, when I look at this game, if you're Bill O'Brien, get off to a fast start, score early and often, build a big halftime lead, get your starters out, and start thinking about Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, this is something where Fordham, I believe, was picked last in the Patriot League this year. So like this isn't a Fordham of old where they might give you some fits. This isn't Holy Cross of the last few years that they took on at the Heights and nearly lost. So I mean, this could be 35-0 at halftime, like you said, and like you said, no point in getting into that. But really, just set the tone early, and I do think that O'Brien's experience can help them yield that 8-win season. Right? It's just we haven't seen that in a while. At Chestnut Hill. And it's a matter of believing that they can actually do it. And I do think, like you said, a really great team on paper. In an ACC that's kind of could be up and down this year. And I think that they need to take advantage of that. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, look, you wanna go into that Michigan State with some early season, that Michigan State game rather, with some early season momentum. That's really important. They're going to win this football game. We don't have to analyze it 8 different ways. They're going to win this game again. The big thing is build an early lead, pull your starters, come out of it healthy, get ready for Michigan State. Because again, if you can find a way to win these first four, then go to East Lansing, beat Michigan State, then you beat Cal, you beat Stanford. Now you've got some real mojo going into October, and that's really important because, again, it's been that middle stretch in recent years, regardless of who the coach is, that's been problematic for the Eagles. Let's shift gears here and talk about UConn. Of course, the Huskies coming off a magical season last year when they finished 9-4 and beat North Carolina in the Fenway Bowl. Jim Mora returns. They graduated a lot of quality talent from that team, but they also return a lot of quality talent, namely quarterback Joe Fagnano. He is back. Cam Edwards is back at running back. Victor Rosa is back at running back. Skylar Bell is back at wide receiver. Lewis Hanson at tight end. You're going to have some new faces along the offensive line, but Wes Hoey returns, and he brings some stability to that group. And then on defense, you got to replace a lot of key contributors along the front seven. UConn went heavy defense in the portal and rebuilt that front seven. The secondary's got some talent, but there's some key contributors there as well that have moved on. There are some holes there that Jim Moore and his staff have had to fill this offseason. I believe they filled them. And once again, the key for UConn is, Ryan, the schedule. The schedule sets up nicely. Now, they're not going to have those 6 games in a row at home like they did last year, but the schedule sets up nicely for them to have another potential 7 to 8 win season, get into a quality bowl game, potentially win it, and continue to build this football program's brand nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them right at 8-4. I think that the
So
schedule,
do I.
like you,
I think when you look at that schedule, 8 wins is very realistic in my opinion.
yeah, BC, Duke will be tough, but some toss-ups. Obviously, Syracuse, in that category too. But Air Force, Buffalo. But they, this is the advantage of being in the independent, in my opinion. This is what I think some schools, when they've been in it, have been searching for. And UConn has kind of found this sweet spot of they're able to schedule these teams that they're comparable to, but have a slight edge. They have an edge over FIU, FAU, Ball State, schools like that. And it's with a guy, and they're better with a guy like Mora. And the fact that all those guys came back, Cam Edwards, Skylar Bell, who Skylar Bell was rumored to be transferring at one point, and I think Fagnano really started.
Got an offer on the table for Michigan,
right? And Fagnano really came into himself, I think, at the end of last year. And I know Nick Evers is still there too, but this is a very good quality team. But you do wonder if they keep doing this, will there be a point where they're like, hey, we want to be in a conference, so we're not just playing for a better bowl? Are they okay with that? But either way, I think the Husky fans have a lot to be excited about again this year. Like this is going to be a fun team that they should really enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I think this is a team that when you look at them, getting Fagnano back is huge. They have some nice quarterback depth, but and if Fagnano doesn't come back, more than likely Nick Evers is your starter, but he stayed. He's back. Tucker McDonald is back. They've got a nice room down there. They've got some talent in that quarterback room. But I think getting Fagnano back and knowing that he's a fit in Gordy Samus's offense, one thing we've learned with UConn since Jim Mora has been here, they're going to run the football, they're going to play physical defense, and they're going to be consistent on special teams. They're going to try to win in all 3 phases. Now, every coach in America wants to win in all 3 phases. There isn't a coach walking this earth, a football coach saying, man, I don't give a damn about special teams. There might be, right? You might have these offensive coaches that think that they could score 66 points a game and win that way every week. But the majority of coaches want to win in all 3 phases. Jim preaches it and practices it and executes it. And I think that's what makes this UConn program so good right now. To your point, the schedule has a couple of traps there. You got to go to Syracuse early. BC, they come up here on October 18th. You got Air Force. You got Duke. There's some tough games in there. But as you said, and I think it's a really good point, when you look at the FAUs, the Buffaloes, the Ball States of the world, they're better than those programs. Talent-wise, they're much better. So I think that that's where their advantage lies. Now, again, long-term, Is it sound business practice to play a schedule like this every year? Probably not. They're going to probably have to up the ante moving forward. But if you find a way to win 9 games again this year, man, for a school that's a basketball school, to have a football program that's that good on a consistent basis, I mean, I don't give 2 shits what your schedule is. If you can do that, then you know what? Jim Moore's got it cooking down there, and they're only going to keep building from there. Now, of course, this Saturday they do host Central Connecticut State at the Rent in the season opener. Of course, Central Connecticut State coming off of winning the NEC last year. In my view, they're the favorites to win it this year. I think they have the best returning talent in the NEC. You got Brady Olson at quarterback, Elijah Howard at running back. They do graduate some key contributors, especially along the front 7 and in the secondary on defense. But you've got an experienced offensive line returning. They've done a nice job in the portal. We know that Adam Lechtenberg can coach. Is there any scenario in which Central Connecticut State hangs around and makes this a game?
I mean, it's one of those where I think they could keep it. I think the first quarter will definitely be close because I think that you'll have some rust from both teams, but I think UConn might have to brush some dust off, and then maybe they'll kind of find their groove. But I could see the first half being a little bit closer. But as soon as it starts to pull away, that's when you gotta take the Donovan Wadleys out, right? Like keep your core here because, like you said, I think they're the favorites. They were picked first in the NEC poll. They've got a pretty good schedule this year. So, this is really their only guaranteed loss you look at on their schedule coming in. So I think could be a little bit in the first half, but I think UConn will for sure pull away.
Yeah, I think UConn wins this game and probably wins it by 3 scores.
Yeah.
But again, the thing with Adam Lechtenberg, he's done such a great job going into his 3rd year at Central Connecticut State. He's done such a great job there, not only turning the program around on the field, but what they're doing off the field and recruiting in the transfer portal, beefing up that roster, bringing in more talent. That's why they've been able to turn it around so quickly. Obviously, it also takes a supportive administration, but hats off to him and his staff. They've done a tremendous job there, and I agree with you. They can keep this game close for a quarter or a half. I think eventually, as always, the cream rises. UConn pulls away, but I think they can probably keep this game close early. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep it close for the entirety of the game. Again, they do have the formula, though. If you can get Howard going early against that revamped front 7, and Olsen makes some good decisions with the football, and he's able to balance things up by hitting some passes down the field, Central Connecticut State could potentially hang around here and make this one interesting. Next up, of course, we have the other FBS program in the area, one that I think you're pretty familiar with, UMass Minutemen, the Joe Harris-Simiak era, kicks off this Saturday when the Temple Owls come to town. They, of course, also have a first-year head coach in Casey Keeler. I think when you look at this matchup, first of all, I'm really excited about UMass football with Joe Harris-Simiak. I think he's a rock star, a rising star in this business. I think he walks into a good situation, believe it or not, because I think Don Brown laid a good foundation, and I think he laid enough of a foundation that Harris-Simiak and his staff can build on it. Of course, it's been a very busy offseason for the Minutemen. That Harris-Simiak and his staff have brought in a lot of talent, completely overhauled the roster. Brandon Rose, the Utah transfer who played for offensive coordinator Mike Bajakian at Utah, he's here. He's the starting quarterback, as it was announced last week. He won the quarterback competition. For me, Ryan, I think two things. One, this is year 1 back in the MAC, which I think really helps this program. Now, look, I know they have struggled in recent years against the MAC. I'm not blind to that fact. But I do think that the MAC is a little down this year. You also have a lot of new coaches in the conference. If there was ever a year that this UMass football program could potentially win 4 or 5 games, this might be the year. I think Harris-Simiak is going to have more success in year 1 than people think, especially because I think they've upgraded the talent. I think that they're going to be very well coached, especially on offense. I'm a big Bajakian fan. I thought he did a terrific job at Boston College. He's got a lot of experience. He brings that to Amherst. Defensively, I think they're going to play fast. I think they're going to play aggressive. Harris-Simiak is a defensive guy. I think that they're well positioned to potentially win 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I think really The only thing that stops people from thinking that is just the historic precedent, and I feel like every season we talk ourselves into, oh, it could be this, it could be that. I mean, surely last year, especially with Don Brown, but like you said, it's key to stress that this is not the strongest year in the MAC, right? You have Northern Illinois who's got their eyes elsewhere. Ohio might have their eyes elsewhere, although they're going to be, I think, probably the best team in the MAC. But a lot of new head coaches, there's a lot of turnover, and this is a time where, compared to where we walked into the MAC in 2012, we are eons ahead of where we were compared to when we walked in 2012 versus now. There's a number of reasons for that, despite all the losses over the years. But just what Harris Simiak is working with, what he was left with, what he was able to bring in, the coaching staff, he wants to be here. He's motivated. There's support from the administration. And I just struggle because it's like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 12 straight years. What am I at this point, right? So I'm just trying to look at it objectively and think that Brandon Rose, I think.
Now, hold on. I have to cut you off for a sec. Is it still an abusive relationship, you and UMass football?
I don't know.
I need to know.
I know I've said it before. I feel like they've just bought me flowers again, but they're really nice flowers. And they said they're going to take me to like Sandals, Bahamas. You know what I mean? Like that's what this feels like. I'm like, Brandon Rose, look at this guy. Like, he's he's every picture I see, he's smiling from ear to ear. Like, he looks like he's having a good time. And the vibe I got for the camp visit, it was a walkthrough day, but it felt very not professional, but it was very well run. There was attention to detail. A lot of people I was talking to there said there's a really big difference from what they've seen in their time at UMass, and it's just, not just with Don Brown, just in general. Like, there's just the vibes just feel like, there's a lot of reports like they're fast, like guys are catching on, and there's some depth concerns at certain positions. I worry about their ability to get to the quarterback, at linebacker, and their defensive backs. I think they'll be able to gel it on the offensive line, but there's a lot to like, especially in the quarterback room. That if Rose goes down, I really like Ahmad Haston, and I really like. Oh my goodness, blanking on his name right now. The Ivy, the Yale guy.
Grant Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Grant
you
Jordan.
You meant AJ Hairston.
Yeah,
Haston transferred out.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that all season. Yeah, Haston. And I think that this is one of the best quarterback rooms they've had in a while. Where if one goes down, I do think that there is something there with Hairston and Jordan, right, who can play. Because seeing Jordan up close and personal last year at the Harvard-Yale game, he almost single-handedly won them that game at times, with his ability to run and throw. So there's just a lot to like, but it's like, can I take the cheese? I don't know. But I like their schedule. That they avoid a lot of, things early on that allowed them, I think, to be able to put some wins together.
Well, and I think the other thing to your point is you get Iowa and Missouri out of the way early. If
right.
you can come out of those two games healthy, right? I mean, it would be shocking if they won either game. They got to go to Kinnick and play Iowa. They got to go to Columbia to play Missouri. They're both on the road. If you can come out of that stretch healthy, though, as you just said, I think the schedule sets up pretty nicely. Yeah. I also think that the schedule is set up in a way where they can finish the year strong and have some momentum. Now, look, I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that they're in bowl contention. It would be a beautiful thing to see UMass in a bowl game. I'm not saying that I believe that, because I don't. I don't think they're a bowl team. All of that being said, though, I do think that improvement that the UMass football fan base has been looking for in recent years, Ryan, I think we're going to see it this year.
Yeah, I mean, they've got great wide receivers. I'm intrigued by Rocco Griffin at running back. He was very, very good at Vanderbilt, a little underwhelming at UTSA, but there's good players across the board. It's just, can they put it together? And what I mean early on is, I feel like in the past we start with a big FBS game week 2 or week 1, but it's where Temple is with all their transition with Casey Keeler, and then we get Bryant next week, and it's just like, you don't go jump right into it, and you get those big FBS games. We're not looking at like, oh, we're playing Texas A&M in November, or we're playing Florida State in late October. You get all that stuff is done. You don't have to worry about that then. And like you said, Bowling Green and Akron in November are huge, and it's really tough, John, because again, I feel like I've been bought flowers again, and I do think I put this poll up on Twitter because I was thinking what UMass head coach is walking into the best situation, And it's hard to argue that Harasimiak's not walking into one of the best ones in a lot of ways because of the players that stayed, the support that he has, the conference this time around. There's a lot to like about and he just seems serious. He has a genuine pedigree. It's not like Walt Bell, who really was never a head coach, or Whipple or Don Brown, who were on in their years, who had that fire, I'm sure, but were again on in years, or Molnar, who probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place, right? Like, this is a guy who's won at Maine. He's been great as an assistant. He's someone that their fans were upset to lose. That's what you need to look for. Like, are the fans of the opposing team that you're losing them from upset that they're losing them? In this case, it was yes. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to your point about the pedigree, I think that people that I've talked to this offseason, and I've gotten to know Joe a little bit this offseason as well. First of all, he's just a genuine dude. He's the real deal. And I don't think he's going to play these stupid games with the media. I think he's going to be very upfront.
He's very direct.
He's very direct. He's not going to come out and tell you what the game plan is this week. You know what I mean? He's not going to come out and talk about, their talent per se, or who's starting where, or what they're doing, or who's stepping in for who. He's not going to do any of those things. But what I think he's going to do is he's going to be very transparent. He's going to be upfront. He's going to be honest. And again, like I said, everybody that I talked to about him this offseason seemingly said the same thing, which is he's a star. He's a rising star. And if he does get it going here, I had one person tell me I don't see more than 3 or 4 years if he gets it going at UMass. And look, if you're UMass, that's why you hired him, right? That's why you're paying him what you're paying him, because you believe that he's the guy that could step in and get this thing going. And I do think if he does get it going and he leaves for another job, now you'll be in a much better place than you were when he took over. So I think he was the right hire, and I think he is going to do a good job there. All that being said, Temple, on paper, I think this is a pretty even matchup. The Owls have struggled in recent years, but I got to tell you, Ryan, I also think this is a game that UMass can win. You got Temple, you got Bryant weeks 1 and 2. If they win this week, you should be Bryant. No offense to my good friend Chris Merritt and his squad. They certainly are good enough to go up there and pull off the upset, but UMass will be favored probably by 2 scores or more. If UMass can get off to a 2-0 start, I mean, that would be chef's kiss for Harasimiak.
Yeah, I mean, that's our Super Bowl of the last few years, right? It's, as sad as it is to say, but it just feels like the right thing. He's got a Northeast pedigree. He's been at Maine. He's, Springfield College, Rutgers. Like, that's the guy that you need in New England, or at UMass. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I agree with you. I think that they can win, but again, it's the historic precedent. But, Temple fans are probably saying the same. They haven't won an opening game that they've been on the road since 2014. So.
Yep. Speaking of the MAC, of course, kicks off tonight. Wyoming at Akron, 3-0 Cowboys in the third quarter. So Wyoming struggled last year, and I don't think they're going to be much better this year, which is a shame because when Craig Bowl was there, it was a pretty good program. Look, with Akron, I think the world of Joe Moorhead. I've met him. I've interviewed him. Fantastic guy, fantastic football coach. I'm just not sure you can win at that program. I mean, you're down 3-0 in the third. That's a game in November that UMass can win if they're healthy and they're playing consistent, good, fundamental football. Ohio currently trailing Rutgers 34-31. So to your point earlier about the Bobcats, they appear to be, if not the favorite, probably one of the 2 best teams in the conference. Buffalo down 7-0 at Minnesota in the second quarter. So, again, to me, when you look at the lay of the land, UMass can be competitive in the MAC. I know they haven't been competitive against the MAC in recent years, but I do think they can be competitive against the MAC this year, year 1 of Joe Harasimiak's tenure in Amherst. You are watching the College Football Preview Show, sponsored by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry, who is also our UMass guy, if you will, on the staff. He covers UMass football for us here in New England Football Journal. And really, for me, I look at Ryan as our lead college football writer. He's as good as you're going to find in New England and really in the country when it comes to writing college football. And I know he hates when I do this to him, but he does fantastic work. UMass football fans, you can find his work at anyfootballjournal.com. And for $2.99 a month, We know you have other options out there. There's some great UMass content out there, but this guy right here is as good as anybody that's writing and covering the program. So make sure you check out his stuff. Let's switch gears here now, Ryan, and I do want to talk about the CAA. Of course, I don't know if we want to call them defending CAA champion. They did win a piece of the league last year. URI kicks off their season tomorrow night at home against the Campbell Camels. Look, I going into this season, expectations are sky high in Kingston. They haven't been this high in a long time, coming off of the Rams winning a piece of the CAA and a first-round playoff game against Central Connecticut State. Expectations are once again at the Rams, who come in as the preseason favorite to win the CAA. Expectations are that they are going to win it. Jim Fleming, head coach, returns. Pat Murphy, offensive coordinator, out. New offensive coordinator, some talent. Some talent has moved on, but some big shoes to fill here, in my opinion, both with Murph. Murphy is one of the best offensive coaches in the region. Some big shoes to fill there. Some big shoes to fill on the field as well in terms of the departing talent. But you do have Devin Farrell back at quarterback, Marquise Buchanan at wide receiver, A.J. Pena, who originally left the program to transfer to Memphis, came back. He's back coming off the edge. The Rams still have plenty of talent, and they should be the favorite to win the CAA. I think they're certainly as good as they were last year in a lot of ways.
Yeah, real quick, thank you for your kind words. I think you're also describing yourself, because no one knows the third string Bryant left tackle like you do. That's you. You are the football New England football college king. So I just want to throw my praise to you, because that's all you. But
it's easy to be whatever you just referred to me as, because we have great people, coaches, players in this region that make it easy to cover them. So
yeah, and it's fun, and it's somewhat niche, which I think makes it really special for me. And it's local, it's regional, and I do think, as far as URI is concerned, I think 9-3 at a minimum. You have Western Michigan, which will be tough, but Stony Brook's going to be good. Holy Cross is going to be a tough game. UNH will be a tough game, but a lot of wins. I think they avoid a lot of good teams in the CAA this season, which I think they're lucky about, right? They don't have to play William and Mary, Villanova. They miss, Monmouth as well. Like they've got a favorable schedule with Devin Farrell back and co. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be, picked first again. And it's just a matter, with the guys that they've lost, can they do that again? And I certainly think they can. And as we've talked about last year, and even more so now, a CAA that continues to change, but not always for the better as far as teams. So but I do think the Rams are set again, as long as they don't trip up along the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think the schedule is set up really nicely for them. And as I mentioned, you have a lot of the right guys back. You graduated a lot of key contributors last year too. Don't get me wrong. Specifically, running back Malik Grant. Those are huge shoes to fill. Wesley Neal on defense, huge shoes to fill. But I think Buchanan, Pena, those are your two best players. Farrell's going to have another year in the system. He's going to play better. He's not going to have to worry about rotating. He's the guy. He split time last year. I think it's really important, though, for them. You mentioned their schedule. There's some tough games there early. It's important for them to get off to a good start, because if you want to play with and beat a Holy Cross team that's going to come in and be physical and punch you in the face, you need to get off to a good start tomorrow night. And I think they will. I think for me, when I look at the Rams, I think 8 or 9 wins and either a share of the CAA or winning it outright is definitely in the cards. I see them getting back to the playoffs. And again, I think it speaks to the job that Fleming and his staff have done down there. They have killed it in the transfer portal. And Flem has always been very modest about their success in the portal, but they really do a good job of going out there, getting the right guys, bringing them to Kingston, and developing them further and getting a lot of them. And let's not forget, when you look at this URI program, Ryan, it wasn't that long ago that there was talk that they were maybe going to the Patriot League, or there was even some people that were suggesting they dropped to D3 and going on scholarship.
Yeah, NEC, I heard at one point.
Yeah, NEC was in play as well. So luckily that didn't happen. And the athletic director, Thor Bjorn, who played football at UMass, he's a football guy. He stuck with Fleming. He stuck with the program. He resisted the urge to move him to the NEC or the Patriot League. He said, you know what? We're going to stay here. We're going to make it work. We're going to figure it out with our scholarships. And look, his belief in Fleming has paid dividends. And now, in many ways, what was for a long time considered a basketball school has kind of become a football school
Yeah.
now. I don't view URI as a basketball school anymore. If nothing else, they're even. But this is a football school in many ways now. So big game tomorrow night against Campbell, but I also think a winnable game for the Rams. I think they'll take care of business and start the season off 1-0. And we will get into our so-called picks like we like to do next week. This first episode is more about previewing / talking about the game. Yeah. Obviously, the rest of the CAA kicks off this week as well. On Saturday, Maine visits Liberty. Look, Jordan Stevens, his squad coming off a good year. It had been a really tough stretch there for the Black Bears up in Orono. They won 5 games last year. A turnaround season of sorts. It's going to be big for this team to build off of that, though, Ryan. And it helps having Carter Peavy back at quarterback. He had a great year in his first year at Maine last year. Having him back helps. Having some talented players back along the front seven helps. But for Maine, and kudos to Coach Stevens in the athletic department, they play a tough out-of-conference schedule. They challenge themselves every year. This year, no different. Opening the season at Liberty against Jamie Chadwell and the Flames. For me, can I see Maine building off of what they did last year? Yes. Will it result in more wins? I don't know if you can win more than 5 there right now, but this program is certainly heading in a direction where they can be a player in the CAA.
Yeah, I agree. I think what will hold them back is that schedule and their ability to do so. I mean, Liberty, Georgia Southern, or Stony Brook, tough games, but where the Wildcats are, for example, with UNH, I mean, I think that they're a lot more even this year. I think their ceiling is, when I looked, I'm like, it feels like 5-7, but I do think they can get to 6-6. I mean, Carter Peavy being there, an honorable mention for the CAA, and it's in the cards. I think it's just, are they ready to take that URI type jump? I don't know yet. I don't think so. But I do, especially with some guys they've graduated. But I do think that it's going to be a competitive season. They have Stonehill, Bryant, Merrimack, North Carolina A&T. They've got winnable games, and it's just a matter of, can they win those toss-ups? That will start to tell us, I think, if they're starting to turn that page and really take those steps. But will they? Who knows?
And early on, week 2, you got to go to William and Mary. Then a couple weeks after that, you got to go to Georgia Southern. So this is a tough schedule for Maine. 3 out of their first 4 games are really tough. They do have the home opener in a couple weeks against Stonehill, which I think Eli Gardner's squad will be much improved from what we saw last year. But the schedule doesn't do them any favors early on. But I do think from the middle portion on, and NCAT A&T comes to town on September 27th. Then they go to Bryant. Then they go to Merrimack. So those are games, if nothing else. That Bryant game will be a battle. But I think that they'll be favored in that Merrimack game. They beat Merrimack at Merrimack last year. But the schedule early on is pretty tough. But I still think that even if this Maine football team, let's say, wins 5 games again this year, I think it's a successful season in a sense, and it's a meaningful step. Because, again, you want to build this thing to a point where you're competing for CAA titles. It's not going to happen overnight. It's tough in college football today with the portal, with NIL. Can you pay guys? Can you get them in academically? There's a lot of moving parts. For Jordan Stevens to do what he's done there, to turn that program around after the rough patch that it's hit in recent years, I think he's done a tremendous job, and he deserves a lot of credit. But getting out of these first 4 games with at least 1 win, they'll be favored against Stonehill. Getting at least that 1 win in the first 4 will position them to where they can really be more competitive in the middle portion of their schedule. You mentioned UNH. The Wildcats open the season on the road. They take on North Carolina Central on Saturday. I think, look, when I look at, for me with this UNH team, it's what happens at quarterback.
Yeah.
We know that they've had really good quarterback play, especially in recent years. They're going to need that quarterback play. They're going to need that really good quarterback play. I do think that offensively, this is going to be a team that's going to rely more on the running game, at least out of the gate. But it's not just that. On defense, you have a lot of new faces as well. You graduate a lot of talented players. Josiah Silver, Flex Ruiz, Ryan Toscano. There's a lot of talent on that front seven that needed to be replaced. So for me, when I look at UNH, I would not be surprised. And look, we know Ricky Santos. He's as fiery as it gets in this area. He's as competitive as it gets. He's a never say die guy. He is not going to sit there and tell you, well, we're young. We may not be good out of the gate. He's not going to make excuses for his football team. But have no fear, coach. I'll do it for you. They're young. They may get off to a slow start out of the gate. But I do think this is a program, Ryan, that's going to get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, they've been very, very fortunate over the last few years, like for what Santos has been able to do and continue. Like, at their spring game this year, you catch him talking to the to the boosters, and you'd have no idea that this is a team that's coming in like this. You would think that this is a all-in year, because that's just how he is. He's one of the best coaches in New England, and he gets his guys up every week, and he does a lot with not a little, but he just does a lot, and he's able to develop players, which I think is one of the biggest things. Like Duncan Moreland at safety, and taking Barry Kleinpeter, making him a safety. And he's got such a great ability to get a lot out of his guys for them to believe and become great players. But it's really Matt Veza, Brooks Bentley, another guy similar to last year who transferred in at D2. Miles Thomas, like you said, is a great running back. And, Caleb Burke, I think, is one of the best wide receivers in the FCS. But it's just, they're picked fifth in the CAA. And I think if this was the older CAA, would they maybe be kind of, would the pollsters been like, like you said, they're young. Would they be more 8-9? Or is that just the state of the CAA where even this Wildcats team is the fifth despite their youth? But I still think, 6-6, 7-5, could be their, is their, not, I don't want to say floor, but that's definitely where I think they'll go. But, Ball State, but they get Villanova and Monmouth, two of the best teams, Holy Cross, Dartmouth, William and Mary, URI. They've got a lot of those toss-up games this year, which is what I think worries me for the season. That it's not so much, Santos and it's just, it's a tough schedule. So, but they've surprised me. Last year, I thought they were going to kind of have a mid-season, and they were great, made the FCS playoffs. But and also shout out to former Wildcat Max Brosmer for making for the Vikings, Dylan Laube on the Raiders. I mean, look at, prime examples of what Santos is able to do.
Yeah, and those two guys, of course, were the straw that stirred the drink for a couple of years with that UNH offense in 2022 and 2023. So it's great to see them in the league and sticking and making an impact. And then, hey, look, that's good advertising for UNH football. What that says is you can go to UNH, great school, get a good education, but if you want to play on Sundays, you can be developed there and play on Sundays. They do take on North Carolina Central this weekend. North Carolina Central beating Southern last week, 31-14. Good football team. I think UNH is going to have some issues matching up, especially on the perimeter. This one's a tough one to call for me because, while on paper, if you're local, you're saying, who the hell is NC Central? They should beat them. It's a good skill. They have a good skill group, good quarterback. It could be a tough matchup for a UNH defense under first-year coordinator Scott James. It's going to be well coached because we know the job Scott did at Holy Cross under Bob Chesney. But you got to replace a lot of people, and you got a lot of new faces, especially along the front seven. It's not going to be an easy game for them.
Yeah, and losing, Garrett Gillick to UMass as well, who was a huge part of that defense the last few years. And, after a kind of tough 2023, huge turnaround in 2024. It's not just on the field. And but I did see that Josiah Silver's been brought on their staff, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Hope he's able to carve out a career doing that as well. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they do go, 5-7. Which would feel odd for a UNH program, but there's a lot up in the air.
Yeah, and this is a tough opener for them. I mean, like I said, NC Central's a good program. They're tough, coming off a win last week. They're skilled. Matching up is going to be the key. I'm going to go UNH here, though. I mean, no offense to Southern, no offense to NC Central, but UNH is better than both of those programs. I think it'll be a tight game, but I'm going to go with the Wildcats here to pick up a big road win to start the season. Brian, of course, is starting the season on the West Coast. They travel out to, well, I say West Coast. I mean, not that New Mexico's on the coast, but they're going to take on the New Mexico State Aggies on Saturday night. Of course, Chris Merritt's Bulldogs coming off a tough first season in the CAA, finishing 2-9, but the expectation is this Bryant football team is going to be much better, and they should. Brennan Meyer takes over at quarterback full-time, got a good skill group back from a talent standpoint, some good experience back along the offensive line. The running back room is deep. As always with this Bryant football team, Ryan, it's going to come down to their defense. They're well coached. Anthony Barisi, their defensive coordinator, does a nice job. They've got some talent back at all three levels, but this is a defense that struggled last year, and they've struggled the last couple of years. They have enough talent back that they have a golden opportunity to flip the script, if you will, and turn things around. But when I look at this Bryant football team, it's hard to say, all right, how much better are they going to be than last year's 2-9 team? Jarrett Guest, a quarterback, Landon Ruggiero, wide receiver. Those are two big losses. Now, Brennan Meyer, to me, is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the CAA. He is going to be a star in Merritt's offense. He plays with pace. He plays with tempo. He's a really good ball handler. He can read, pull, and throw the RPO game. He can do a lot. All that being said, is it enough for this Bryant football program to take some meaningful steps? Because they've been pretty good under Merritt. What we saw last year is not what we had seen out of that program in recent years.
Yeah, it felt like an anomaly, but it's a testament that they had guys that were transferring to bigger programs, right? And like I remember us talking on this program about just them stepping up and taking on the challenge of playing big schools. Like, I mean, they played UNLV, was it last season or the season before, out in Vegas, and it's just it's an ambitious program, not just for football, but athletically across the board. It is tough though, because they have they get Monmouth, Stony Brook, UMass, New Mexico State. Those are at least 4 or 5 games where you're talking could be losses. So it's can you beat Brown? Can you beat Albany? Bentley. I think they should be okay, but it's just it would feel weird for them to regress more. But I do feel like something like 3-4 wins could be in the cards if they're not able to take that step. But it's hard. It's this being picked 13th in this CAA looks a lot tougher than it would have a few years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is hard. And I think they're a great fit for the CAA.
Yeah.
And I think long-term, Merritt's going to get it going in the CAA. The facilities are there. Of course, they added another side to the football stadium and a multi-million-dollar project to improve the football stadium and to improve the facilities on campus. That school has spent a lot of money. They're serious about winning in sports, specifically football. They put a lot of money into the football program. For me, look, baby steps. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think they can win 5 or 6 games this year. I don't think they can. But if you can win 4, and the schedule gives them the opportunity to do that, their home opener is against Division II Bentley. They have some opportunities there to improve by 2 or maybe even 3 games. But even if you win 4 or dare I say 5, that's going to be a good year given where this program is right now in the CAA with their talent level. Merritt and his staff done a good job increasing the talent level, but this is clearly a program that from a talent standpoint still has a long way to go to be able to consistently compete with the URIs and the UNHs and the William and Marys. And of course, let's not forget, the CAA is changing. It's not going to be what it's been. Villanova's leaving after this season. It's changing. And William and Mary's leaving after this season. So it really is changing. So the opportunity is there to become a conference blue blood if you continue to build a program and do it the right way. Let's take a look at the FCS independents in our area. Sacred Heart and Merrimack. Of course, Sacred Heart is going to be going into the CAA next year, as was announced a few weeks back. Merrimack is opening the season at Kent State. Mike Giannetti's squad graduates a lot of key contributors, but you bring back Aiden Pereira at quarterback. Matthias Latham at running back, I think could be really good for them. The defense, as always, plays fast. They're athletic. They've got length in the secondary. They'll play good defense. For me, when I look at this Merrimack team, Ryan, how do you replace Jermaine Corbett's production? He was the offense last year. He was the focal point. Giannetti, just like his predecessor, Dan Curran, wants to run the football, play downhill, play fast on both sides of the ball, play fundamentally sound and mistake-free. I think he's got the pieces to do that. You know, Kent State has sucked the last couple of years, like Akron. This could be this for me is an upset alert game. I think it's going to be a tough game for them to win. I think they're going to play. They're going to play tough. They're going to play it close. They're not going to get blown out. And it would not shock me if Merrimack goes out there and wins this game. Look what they did last year at Air Force.
Right. It's hard because this is a team that without a conference is kind of tough to predict because they play such an amalgam of teams. They play old NEC, they play Patriot League. It's even a little CAA, Harvard. They really are kind of like a buffet here of FCS in the Northeast, right? And so it's hard for me.
A buffet. They're like the Golden Corral of football here in New England.
Literally, it was down to their colors. So it's hard for me to predict, and I know they've got a lot of talent, but it's how do you assess it? They don't have guys being named to a conference, preseason team. They're not being picked in that poll. So not like that's the only indicator, but it's hard when you can't stack up against your fellow competition to say, oh, well, this guy's here, this guy's here. So, it could be a 4-7 season, but they could surprise us and, go 7-4 as well, but I do think that they've got a tougher schedule with, but an ambitious one too. The fact that they're always, that they want to take on Maine, in Harvard is I think really great for the program. And is this someone who might try and go to the CAA someday for football? I don't know.
They've kind of nixed that, and I think a big reason why they're nixing it, at least for now, is the facilities issue. I don't know if the school financially, and I don't know their finances, but the sense is that they may not be at a place right now where financially they can make the commitment it's going to take from a facility standpoint to play in the CAA. And I think, look, it's like Stonehill made the jump to Division I. They made the jump to the NEC. But if Stonehill realistically wants to jump into another conference here in the coming years, they're going to need to upgrade the facilities. WB Mason was a nice, new, state-of-the-art Division II stadium when it opened a few years ago, whatever it was, 15 years ago. It's not that anymore. You need stands on the other side. So Merrimack is kind of in that boat from a facility standpoint. I don't think that they're a CAA facility. Bryant recognized pretty early on, the last couple of years anyway, that if we're going to either get into the CAA or leave the Big South and go to an even bigger conference, we need to invest in our facilities to make that move. And I think Merrimack, at least for now, they're poo-pooing a move to the CAA because from what I gather, and this is just strictly my opinion, it doesn't seem to me like they're at a place right now financially where they want to commit to adding more to Duane Stadium and adding more to that facility.
Okay. Well, that's great insight because I've been curious myself because it's weird to think of where they'll fit then if they're just going to keep doing this independent game, which I wonder how much they would gather from revenue joining a conference, even if
and you bring up a great point, Ryan. I think you can get away with the independence game at the FBS level. I think at the FCS level, it's a different animal. The money's not there. The money's there in the sense that the money is there in playing the FBS schools and getting paid.
Right.
That's where the money is. And I do think part of their vision, and again, I'm just spitballing here, but part of me thinks that part of their vision is play these FBS schools. Yes, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be as competitive as you want, potentially. Although, again, they went out to Air Force last year and almost beat a service academy. But I think part of their thought process is probably, you know what? We'll go play some FBS schools, get a paycheck to play them. We can build a war chest, and then we can start to look at how, between that and alumni and donors, how we want to develop a higher level of facility so that we can play at a higher level. So I'm sure that that's probably part of their thought process. Sacred Heart also opening up the season on Saturday, hosting Stonehill, so we can kill two birds with one stone here, Mr. Barry. Sacred Heart coming off a big win to wrap up their season, beating the aforementioned Merrimack Warriors for the inaugural Yankee Conference Championship, 38-28. And, look, when I look at this Sacred Heart team, I look at a team that, to me, is tailor-made for Mark Knopfrey. they're going to be an old school Sacred Heart team. They're going to run the ball. They're going to get good quarterback play, opportunistic quarterback play, and they're going to lean on their defense. They've always been a defense-first program with Nofre there. Last year, we saw the offense, specifically the passing game, really come to life. It would be nice if that's the case again this year, but the tried and true formula for this program is to run the ball and play good D.
Yeah, it was encouraging because I think there was a lot of questions about a lot of folks that left last year and how Nofre was going to replace it, and they were slow, and there were some difficult moments, especially like some low-scoring games and some really difficult quarterback play. But it picked up over the course of the year, and I think they've got a pretty good schedule. Lehigh, Montana State, Villanova, those are going to be very, very tough games. But again, Merrimack, LIU, Central Connecticut State, Delaware State, all games where they could see them. I have them somewhere around 5, 6, 7 wins, depending how things go. But I think that it's really going to depend on just how can they be consistent over the course of the season and avoid that slow start and kind of get right going. And I think that game week 1 against Stonehill is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned next week they go to Lehigh, which will be a tough game. Then they got to go to Long Island. Then they got to go to Norfolk State. Then they come home for Delaware State. So, and then of course later on in the season they got to go out to Montana. So it's not an easy schedule early on. They've got some challenging games there. But to your point, outside of that Montana game at the end of the season, they also have some games that they could potentially compete in and win. Now, they're playing a Stonehill team coming off a really difficult season under Eli Gardner. And I've said this the first 2 years when Stonehill made the move up to Division I and how impressed I was with them making that move and being as competitive as they were. Clearly last year, the Skyhawks took a step back. It was kind of a rebuilding year, if you will. They lost a lot of talent. But they're back in that situation again this time around. They've lost a lot of talent again. But I saw them in the spring. Our Ava Fernandez spent some time with them last week at fall camp. The attitude is different, though. I think going into last year, they knew that it could be a long year with some of the veteran experience that they had to replace. They had some question marks at wide receiver. They had some question marks along the front seven, specifically a linebacker. Some of those question marks are still there. But you get the sense being around this program, Ryan, that last year may have been an anomaly, and they're going to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's Everett's, right? Mo Said at defensive back, Charles Battaglia at linebacker. They've got some pieces on defense, which I think is encouraging. It's just can they get back to that form they were at in that first, kind of incumbent year, or rather just first year being in the FCS. So I think it's another challenging schedule, but they've got some potential wins in there. Mercyhurst, Wagner, St. Francis. There are some winnable games, but they do, I think, get a lot of difficult games like Lafayette and Maine and Penn, Yale. But I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Stonehill as their game that they can win, but I think that is going to actually benefit Stonehill, put pressure on those teams where they can take advantage and just try and keep building, right? Just try and get to where you're at a point where you can show recruits that you can be something.
Yeah. Well, a big key for them is going to be quarterback Jack O'Connell, the North Andover native. He's going to need to play well. They've got a deep quarterback room there, and again, we could potentially see a couple of the other quarterbacks. Drew Eason, of course, comes to mind. He played at Methuen High School, graduated a couple of years ago. Sean Brown from Norwalk, Connecticut. They also bring in Noah McKenzie from Walpole. So they've got a deep quarterback room, but it's O'Connell's job. And I think if he plays within the system, Dan Hebert, the new offensive coordinator who came in, he's going to bring in that multiple West Coast offense. I think if O'Connell plays within the system, they've got some really good young receivers that they like. They're going to run the football. They've got some experience back in the backfield. I think the key is him, because you mentioned some of those guys on defense. I think their defense is going to be much improved from what we've seen the last couple of years because they've got some experience back. A lot of those guys played last year. So key is O'Connell. If he plays well at quarterback, they can protect him by running the football early and some of those young receivers develop. This team should be better. But you also bring up a good point. The schedule doesn't exactly do them any favors either. And that's the hard part, right? When you make that jump from D2 to FCS, it may not be the case year one. We're going to see that this year with New Haven. But as you get into year 2, year 3, year 4, in Stonehill's case, this is going to be year 4 of being D1. The schedule starts to catch up to you. If your talent level isn't moving along with your schedule to allow you to be competitive, it can be tough.
Yeah, and that's just the challenge, right? Is trying to find that balance of being an attractive program, making it worthwhile in your conference, and being able to attract players. And what is great is seeing how, kind of mass made a program like Stonehill is, right? When you're saying that quarterback room, North Andover, Walpole, Bethune, it's great to hear from my perspective for you and I, because we love, New England, especially Massachusetts, being from here and such. But it's just, you really hope it can translate, because that will help really set a goal for players at the end of the day too. But it's a difficult balance, when you are playing against these different schools. So you can hope that they start to put together.
No, I agree. And again, I think that that's just it, right? It can be a difficult balance. And I do. I mean, Stonehill has stuck with Eli Gardner. He had some really good years there, especially when they were Division II. When they made the jump, he did a great job guiding the program into D1 and keeping them competitive. So last year, to me, was a down year because they were young. But I think this offseason, they've got a fresh philosophy on offense. It's, they're doing something different. Defenses are going to need to study them more. They're not going to really have a book on them, but I think they've upgraded the talent. There's some experience there. This is a football team that I think will be much better this season. Holy Cross kicks off the 2025 season this weekend on Saturday. They will hit the road for a 3:30 in the afternoon tilt against a good Northern Illinois program. Thomas Hammock does a great job there with the Huskies, the former Husky running back. Of course, Northern Illinois went into South Bend last year and beat Notre Dame. So this is a program that has had established success in the MAC through the years, and this year should be no different. Dan Curran's team's going to be better, Ryan. I think they're going to play more to his identity. They're going to run the football. They're going to get good quarterback play. They're going to lean on their defense. They're huge up front. Jaden Clervaux, running back, is a horse. They're going to play Holy Cross football, but is Holy Cross football in 2025 going to be enough for this football team to once again at least win a piece of the Patriot League and potentially make the FCS playoffs?
Right, and I think last year, like their record didn't, I think, tell the whole story because of how challenging their schedule was, and another really difficult schedule. And UNH, URI, Yale, Harvard, they're not taking on New England's so-soist. They're taking on New England's finest, and Richmond, Lehigh, and IU will be tough. But this is another season where 8-4 should be the goal, with a share of that Patriot League, or at least outright. But at least 7-5. But again, there's a lot of toss-up games there just because of how challenging that non-conference is. But they're not shying away from a single non-conference game, which is again, huge credit to the program. And and can Cal Swanson take the talent he had in Illinois that didn't really quite work out there, and is he able to translate that? Because there has been pretty solid quarterback play that we've seen in Worcester, but it's just, can he be that next guy and step right up, with Max Mosey and such? So, I mean, I certainly think so, but it's, again, a tough schedule.
Yeah, and you mentioned Swanson. I mean, you get some Matt Suka vibes there a little bit from him, a little bit more of a pocket passer than a runner. But you know what? This is a golden opportunity for him. This is why you transfer and you leave a program like in Illinois and come down to the FCS level to play at Holy Cross, because you're going to play against good competition. You're going to put good play on tape because you're going to be well coached. We all know how good a coach Dan Curran is, and we all know what kind of staff he has. But I do think that if Swanson develops and he plays well, and he matches up with Clervaux in the backfield, and they can run the football effectively and be physical and lean on people, this is going to be a Holy Cross football team that will once again be in the mix to win the Patriot League, and not only win the Patriot League, but also make a run in the FCS playoffs. Look, we saw them do it under Bob Chesney. They can do it under Dan Curran as well. Very similar styles of play there between those two. I could see them being back, if you will. And let's not forget, the Patriot League is going to get much tougher now. with all these CIA defectors coming in here in the next couple of years, the Patriot League's going to get tough. And then no disrespect to Lehigh and Lafayette and those schools, but the ante has been upped in the Patriot League now. It's going to be a much tougher league to win than it used to be, where it usually came down to 2 or 3 teams. You mentioned Fordham. Of course, they opened at Boston College. They had an epic game against Holy Cross 3 years ago in Worcester. Those days are over for the Fordham program, at least for now. But with this influx of CAA schools, especially CAA Blue Bloods, with these programs coming in, it's going to be a tougher league to win. Finally, of course, New Haven, we've got a 17th school now that is playing Division I college football in New England, and that is the New Haven Chargers. They made the jump up this spring. Interim head coach Mark Powell will lead them into Marist tomorrow night to take on the rival Red Foxes. A lot of turnover on this New Haven roster, Ryan. A lot of new faces. Powell takes over as head coach. He's, in theory, the interim head coach, but he's got a lot of energy. He's familiar to the programs. He's got FBS coaching experience. If he is the interim, he has the inside track to being the full-time coach. Look, we saw this with Stonehill a couple of years ago. They were able to be competitive in year one in Division I. New Haven isn't playing a bear of a schedule, if you will. They got to go to Albany. They, as I mentioned, they open with Marist. Saginaw Valley State comes into town. They've got a decent home slate. But when you look at this New Haven program, for me, I think at best you're looking at 3 or 4 wins. There's going to be some growing pains this year in Division I.
Yeah, and it's good that they still have those D2 schools to be playing, kind of a soft landing there. And, in an Albany squad that will be down, a Marist squad that is just okay. Same with Mercyhurst, So,
although Mercyhurst played Youngstown State tough tonight.
Okay. Oh, geez. Yeah. So that's I can just say for a college football fan in New England, I'm pumped that they're here. I think it's going to be awesome, like to think of the rivalry that can brew with Sacred Heart just being right down the
later on this year.
Yeah, playing right down the road to start a rivalry off there. CCSU's not too far up the way, and they're close to LIU. It's great, and I think that New Haven being a bigger city, I think there's a lot of potential resources there. So I think that it's exciting, but it's going to be some growing pains. But I think that they're poised with where I think they are geographically in a lot of ways to be able to, I think that they've got a bigger head start than I say that, maybe a Stonehill when they joined for a couple of reasons.
I agree. You know what? I haven't thought of that, and that's a great point. The geography there, where they are in Connecticut, and their recruiting base is going to be vitally important to them building a successful D1 program.
Yeah, and that's of course no knock to a school like Stonehill or of course, but it's just it's the being near the metro area, being closer to DC, that they've just got a Pennsylvania, a good recruiting base, and I think an entertaining school. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that they've got blue turf, right?
They do, and they've been very good the last few years.
Yes, they're making a jump when they've got good players who are playing well, and Josh Tracy, a wide receiver, and so I'm excited to see what they can do, and if they can, maybe kind of be like a Stonehill in that first year and kind of surprise some people, that would be really encouraging.
I agree. I think it would be too. And again, I think there'll be some growing pains there, and they had a lot of success in recent years. And I found the coaching change to be interesting as well. I thought the timing of it was interesting, but Chris Pencease didn't want, he wasn't happy with the way that the whole situation was handled with, them making the jump up and the way he found out. And I think that laid the foundation for Powell to come in. But Powell has the pedigree and the experience to guide the program into this next move.
Yeah, and if he's able to, show that he can do something, then that, status could flip and he could be the guy. So, which is all the more incentive to play well.
Yeah, and again, Chris Pencease did a great job there. He did. I mean, they were routinely winning conference titles there. They made the Division II playoffs a bunch. So those are big shoes to fill, and Powell knows that. He's been in the program. But again, I think to your point, and I think it's a really good one, when you look at proximity to New York and the metro New York area, and New Jersey and DC, the DMV, they can build a nice little wall there where they can not only get Connecticut kids, which has kind of sort of been their lifeblood through the years, but now you can have those New York kids, which they've also always gotten. Now you can have those Jersey kids. Now you can go into the DMV and say, hey, we're a D1 program. You know what? If you're not getting the scholarship offers you want, let us give you that scholarship. So it's going to take time, but to your point, they've got, and Stonehill goes into those areas too, and Stonehill can sell that education. But New Haven, I think, does have some inherent advantages in terms of location and capitalizing on that location. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's a brand new season kicking off here, and we're excited for it. And I think we've got a great season in store for us. I think we're going to have some really good local matchups, some games that are going to be games we're going to be talking about for a while. And certainly New England Football Journal will have you covered from start to finish. We know you have a lot of quality options out there, but we think we provide the best college football coverage in the area. So make sure you're following along with us. Any final thoughts here, Mr. Barry, before we kick off week one?
No, I'm just excited that we're back, and I'm excited for another great season. And, I've got high hopes for a lot of our programs. I think there's a lot of them that could do some damage. And I really hope we see a good New England presence in the FCS playoffs. That's because last year was okay. The year before was down. So I'd love to continue to see that bustling as far as FCS playoff appearances. And let's get all of our FBS teams bowl eligible. I don't know if UMass is going to be there, but if let's see BC take that step. Let's see UConn continue to take that step. It makes us all look good, right? So,
yeah, I agree. No, and I think that's vitally important to your point. If all three of those schools can somehow be bowl eligible, man, that would be unbelievable for the area. It'd be unbelievable for the programs. And look, after last year, Boston College, UConn, they were bowl eligible. That's the expectation with them. With UMass, if Joe Harris-Simiak somehow found a way to get them to that level in year one, he might not be here for a year or two, but they may also erect a statue in his honor at some point. I mean, it would be impressive.
Every year I save 2 days to the end of my time off for that UMass Bowl appearance. I save 2 days of PTO because you never know.
No.
If I've got to go to Idaho, if I got to go to Mobile, Alabama, Detroit, I'll go wherever, right?
Yep.
So
as long as they get there. And then the advantage you'll have is you can cover the game on site. You don't have to pay for it. So
that's right. Thank you for that.
There you go.
Yeah.
All the perks that go with writing for New England Football Journal. Ryan, great job as always, my friend. Great to see you. Excited to talk football with you again this season. And of course, you can catch our show every week. We're live. We're live on Facebook, X, Twitch, our YouTube channel. If you love college football in New England, you love D1 college football, then the College Football Preview Show is the show for you. That'll do it for this week's episode. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. Until then, stay safe, and as always, peace.